Your hands are inside a man's chest cavity at 3 in the morning in a country that does not appear on your deployment orders, and the man is conscious and looking at you, and you are talking to him about his daughter's name because keeping him talking is keeping him here, and keeping him here is the only objective that exists in the world right now. You are 26 years old. You have been a Special Forces medic for 14 months. The man's name is Sergeant First Class Daniel Reyes. He is 34 years old. He has a wife named Carmen and a daughter named Lucia, who is 4 years old and who drew him a picture before this deployment that he keeps in the left breast pocket of his kit, which is the pocket that the round entered through before it decided to stop in his thoracic cavity and introduce itself to his left lung. The picture is still in the pocket. The pocket is currently occupied by your left hand. You are performing a procedure called a needle thoracostomy to relieve the tension pneumothorax that is collapsing his lung and killing him, with the calm, deliberate precision of a person who has performed this procedure 472 times on simulated patients and twice on actual human beings in actual emergencies, and who is now performing it a third time on a man he has eaten breakfast with every morning for 11 months. Eating breakfast with someone changes the procedure. Not technically. Technically, the procedure is the same. The needle goes in the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, perpendicular to the chest wall. You know this the way you know your own name. You could do it in total darkness with your non-dominant hand. You have just done it in near total darkness with your non-dominant hand, because your dominant hand is applying pressure to a secondary wound that announced itself 6 seconds after the first one, and that you are currently managing by feel, because your headlamp is pointed at Reyes's face, because Reyes's face is more important than your headlamp right now. He asks you if he is going to make it. You tell him yes. This is not a lie. It is a clinical assessment delivered with conviction, because conviction is part of the treatment. A patient who believes they are going to make it has a measurably better outcome than a patient who does not, and you have the studies to prove it, and you have memorized the studies, because that is what Special Forces medics do. They memorize everything, because in the environment where you work, the library is not available, and the internet is not available, and the nearest hospital is not available, and the only resource is what is already inside your head. The medevac is 14 minutes out. 14 minutes is a geological age when your hands are inside someone's chest. You talk to him about Lucia. He tells you she likes horses. You tell him you will take her to see some horses when you get back. He says you do not like horses. You tell him you like horses fine. He says you told me you are afraid of horses. You tell him you are not afraid of horses. You are appropriately cautious around horses, which is different. He laughs. The laugh is the best vital sign you have gotten in 4 minutes. The medevac lands in 13 minutes and 40 seconds. Reyes makes it. Lucia gets to keep her father. You go back to the compound and you wash your hands and you sit on your bunk and you stare at the wall for a while, and then you write the incident report, and then you go to sleep, because tomorrow there will be another day, and the day will require you to be functional, and being functional requires sleep, and sleep is something you have learned to access in Windows that other people would not recognize as sufficient. This is your life. This is what you signed up for. You would do it again. You have done it again. Many times. Level 2. The selection. You did not start here. Nobody starts here. You start at the beginning, which for Special Forces is the Special Forces Assessment and Selection Course. 18 days in the mountains of North Carolina with a rucksack that weighs 55 pounds and a series of events that are not disclosed in advance and that are calibrated to the specific margin between what a person thinks they can do and what they actually can do. The margin is larger than most people think. You discover this on day 4, when you have been moving for 22 hours, and your body has filed every report it knows how to file, and you have read all the reports and decided to continue anyway. The continuation is not heroic, it is not dramatic. It is a series of steps in a direction with the singular focus of someone who decided before they started that stopping was not an available option. You are not the fastest. You are not the strongest. You are the most consistent, which turns out to be the thing that matters most in a selection course. That is not testing peak performance. It is testing what you do when peak performance is no longer available. When the tank is genuinely empty, and the body is genuinely done, and the only thing moving your feet forward is a decision you made before any of this started. You pass. You are assigned 18 Delta, the Special Forces Medic Specialty, the most demanding medical training in the United States military. 57 weeks of instruction that covers emergency trauma care, surgical procedures, anesthesia, dentistry, veterinary medicine, public health, and the specific application of all of the above in environments that have none of the infrastructure that any of the above was designed to assume. 57 weeks. For context, paramedic training is typically 6 months. Emergency medicine residency is 3 years, but takes place in hospitals with equipment and colleagues and backup and electricity and a supply chain and a floor that is not the ground in a country you cannot name. You are being trained to be the emergency room, not to work in one, to be one, to carry one in a bag on your back and deploy it wherever the need is, and to produce outcomes in those conditions that a hospital would be proud of, using resources that a hospital would consider inadequate, in timeframes that a hospital would consider impossible. Your instructor on week 3 says something you write down and keep. He says the Special Forces medic is not a combat soldier who does medicine. He is a physician who does combat. The distinction matters more than you can currently understand. You will understand it later. You will understand it in ways that keep you awake. You write it down. You keep it. Level 3. The training. The medical training is unlike anything you have experienced before. Not because of the volume, because of the specificity. Every procedure you learn is learned in the context of the environment where you will perform it. You do not learn surgical airway management in a classroom and then separately learn what to do when someone is shooting at you. You learn surgical airway management while someone is shooting at you. Simulated, but the stress response your body runs is not simulated, and the decisions your hands make under that stress response are not simulated, and the muscle memory your nervous system builds from the repetition is not simulated. You practice on animals. Live tissue training. The specific hands-on experience of managing a real wound on a real body that responds to intervention the way real bodies respond, which is to say, unpredictably, messily, and with the specific urgency of something that is actually happening. You also practice on each other. IV insertions, catheterizations, procedures that are technically minor and that are considerably less minor when the arm being inserted into belongs to a person you know, and the person doing the inserting is tired and stressed and being evaluated. You get good at IVs. You get so good at IVs that your teammates will eventually prefer your IVs to those of actual nurses at actual forward surgical teams, which is either a testament to your skill or a commentary on the quality of the forward surgical teams, and you have decided it is both. You also get a best friend named Stanley, somewhere in this period. Stanley is not a medic. Stanley is an 18 Charlie, a Special Forces engineer, which means his primary professional skill is making things explode, which is the philosophical opposite of your primary professional skill, and which creates a friendship dynamic that is genuinely entertaining to everyone in your team. Stanley's approach to problems is to apply force until the problem resolves. Your approach is to understand the problem completely before intervening in a targeted and precise way. You are both correct in your respective domains. You argue about this approximately 3 times a week. He says once, during a training exercise, in which you are arguing about whether a particular wall needs to be breached or climbed, that the difference between a medic and an engineer is that engineers fix things that are broken, and medics fix things that are broken, but also have feelings about it. You tell him that is the dumbest thing you have ever heard. He says you are literally talking to a wall right now instead of going through it. You go through the wall. He is occasionally right. Level 4, the first real one. Your first real patient is not in combat. Your first real patient is a 14-year-old boy in a village in a country you cannot name, who has a femur fracture from a fall from a roof, and who has been lying in that condition for 36 hours, because the nearest medical facility is 4 hours away by road, and the road is not consistently safe, and the family did not know who else to call. Your team is in the village for a different reason. You are there because a Special Forces team is in most places for reasons other than the ones that turn out to matter most. You examine the boy. His name is something you cannot pronounce correctly on the first attempt, and he watches you try with the specific patience of a 14-year-old who is in significant pain and who has decided you are the most interesting thing to happen to him in 36 hours, which is accurate. The fracture is closed, no vascular compromise, painful, unstable, requiring immobilization and pain management and time. You have all three in your bag. You splint the leg. You administer appropriate analgesia. You explain to the family, through your team's interpreter, what has happened and what will happen and what they need to watch for and what to do if the things they need to watch for appear. The boy's mother holds your hand when you finish. She does not speak your language. She holds your hand and she looks at you, and the looking contains everything that a mother's look contains when someone has done something for her child. You do not cry. You cry in the truck on the way back. Stanley is in the truck. He does not mention the crying. This is the most supportive thing Stanley is capable of, and you both understand it. 6 weeks later, you treat a gunshot wound for the first time. The wound is to the abdomen. Abdominal wounds are complicated in ways that chest wounds are not. Chest wounds are urgent and dramatic and technically demanding. Abdominal wounds are slower and more insidious and require you to make decisions about things you cannot see based on signs that are there if you know how to look for them. You know how to look for them. You stabilize him. You establish IV access in both arms. You push fluids. You manage his pain without masking his neurological signs. You arrange his evacuation to a surgical facility. You hand him over with a full report delivered in the clipped, precise language of someone who has practiced this transfer of care until it is as automatic as breathing. He survives. You find out 3 weeks later through your interpreter. You tell Stanley. Stanley says good, he says. Now can we talk about the wall situation again? Because I think you made the wrong call. You tell him the wall situation was resolved 6 weeks ago. He says I know, he says. I am still thinking about it. Level 5. The weight. You are 29, and you have been a Special Forces medic for 3 years, and you carry a weight that is not in your rucksack. The rucksack weighs 62 pounds. The other weight does not have a number. It is the weight of outcomes. Every patient you have treated lives in a specific file in your memory that you did not choose to keep, but that keeps itself. The boy with the femur fracture. The man with the abdominal wound. Reyes and Lucia and the horses. The ones who made it. The ones who did not. The ones who did not are the ones that the training did not prepare you for. Not technically. Technically, the training prepared you for everything. You knew going in that the Special Forces medic operates in environments where the resources are inadequate and the time is insufficient, and the outcomes will not always be good, and that this is the reality of the job, and not a failure of the person doing it. Knowing this and experiencing it are different. There is a man, whose name you do not say out loud anymore. He was 22 years old. He was on his first deployment. The wound was survivable in a hospital, in a compound in a country you cannot name, with the equipment in your bag, and the time available before his physiology made the decision for both of you. It was not survivable. You did everything right. Every step, every decision, every intervention in the correct sequence with the correct technique and the correct clinical reasoning. Your team leader reviewed the incident report and told you there was nothing different you could have done. You know he is right. You also know that knowing he is right and believing he is right are two different things that live in two different places inside you, and that the distance between them is something you visit at 3 in the morning sometimes. Stanley knocks on your door on one of those 3 in the morning visits. Not because you called him, because he knows. He has been your teammate for 2 years, and he has developed the ability to identify when you are in the specific place that requires someone to knock. He comes in. He sits down. He does not say anything useful for a while, which is fine, because there is nothing useful to say. Then he says the guy whose name you are not saying. You say yeah. He says he knew what medics can and cannot do in the field. He signed the same papers we all signed. You say I know. He says that is not the same as it being okay. You say no. He says I know. You sit there for a while. Then Stanley says, I need you to eat something because you have not eaten since yesterday, and I need you functional, and this is me telling you that as your teammate, not as your friend. You tell him it is the same thing. I know, he says. Eat anyway. You eat. You go back to work. This is the job. Level 6. The expert. You are 32, and you are the most dangerous medic in your group. And that sentence sounds like a contradiction, and is not a contradiction. Dangerous in the sense that matters. You are the person your team depends on in the moments when depending on the wrong person is fatal. You have treated wounds in moving vehicles, in active firefights, in collapsed structures, in water, in temperatures that pushed your equipment to its operational limits and pushed you past yours. You have improvised interventions with materials that are not in any medical kit, because the medical kit was not available and the patient was, and the gap between those two facts required a solution. You have a reputation, not publicly. In the specific small world of Special Forces medicine, where the people who know things with granular accuracy, your name means something that takes a long time to earn and that you have earned. You also teach. Not formally. Every senior medic teaches informally. Younger medics rotate through your team, and you teach them the things that 57 weeks of training does not cover. The things that only exist in the gap between the training and the reality. How to manage a patient who is fighting you because they do not understand what you are doing. How to make a clinical decision when the clinical picture is unclear and the time for clarity has passed. How to file the outcome in the place where it needs to go so that it does not interfere with the next one. That last one is the hardest to teach. You have a surgery scheduled, not an emergency. An elective procedure on your left shoulder that has been requiring more and more of your physical management over the past 18 months, and that your orthopedic surgeon describes as overdue, with the specific tone of someone who has been saying overdue for a year and has graduated to a different word that means something stronger. You schedule it between rotations. You do the surgery. You rehab the shoulder in 6 weeks instead of the 12. The surgeon says, "This is not medically advisable." You tell him you are aware. He says you are going to need this shoulder for a long time. You tell him you need it now. He says he cannot stop you. You tell him you know. You go back on rotation. Level 7, the teacher. You are 38, and you have stopped counting deployments. You are now a senior medical sergeant. The senior medical sergeant of a Special Forces Operational Detachment Alpha is the person responsible for the medical readiness of 12 operators in a team that deploys to environments where medical readiness is the difference between the mission and the end of the mission. You manage the medical training of every person on the team. You conduct medical threat assessments for every operational environment. You are the person who decides what goes in the medical bag, and why, and in what quantity, and in what configuration. And the decisions you make at this stage of planning are the decisions that someone will be grateful for, or not grateful for, at 3 in the morning 6 months from now. You also run a medical civic action program in a village, in a country you have been working in for 2 years. Every other week your team goes to the village, and you run a clinic. The clinic is a tent and 2 folding tables, and your bag and the supplies your team has pooled together from multiple sources, and your interpreter, and occasionally one of your younger medics who rotates through specifically to learn what medicine looks like when the resources are a tent and 2 folding tables. You have seen 712 patients in this clinic over 2 years. You know this number because you keep a log. The log is not required. It is not submitted to anyone. It is your record of the 712 interactions between your hands and the specific medical needs of specific human beings in a place that has not historically had reliable access to those hands. The log is in a notebook in your kit bag. It goes everywhere you go. A young medic named Torres rotates through your team on his 2nd deployment. He is 24 years old. He has the specific combination of technical competence and emotional rawness that you recognize from your own early years. The look of someone who is very good at the technical parts and has not yet fully processed what the technical parts cost. He treats a child in the clinic one afternoon. The child is 7 years old. Respiratory infection, caught early, treatable, uncomplicated. Torres treats her correctly, completely, efficiently. She goes home with medication and instructions and a sticker from a sheet Stanley inexplicably packed in the medical bag as a joke that turned out to be the most useful thing in the bag for pediatric patients. Torres watches her leave. He stands there for a moment longer than the situation requires. You let him stand there. Then you say, "Write it down." He looks at you. You say the log. Write down that you treated her, and what you gave her, and what you told her family. Not for the record, for yourself. So that when the ones that do not go well are sitting with you at 3 in the morning, you have a document of the ones that did. He looks at the notebook. He takes it. He writes it down. You watch him write, and you think about the boy with the femur fracture, and the horses you do not actually like, and Reyes's left breast pocket, and the name you do not say out loud, and the 3 in the morning that Stanley knocked on your door for. You think about 712. Then you go back to the clinic. There are more patients waiting. There are always more patients waiting. You retire on a Thursday. Not a Friday like some people, Thursday. Because there was one more thing that needed handling on Thursday morning, and you handled it, and then you retired. This is how your career ends. Not with a dramatic final moment, with one more thing handled, and then the handling being done. Your mother is at the ceremony. She has never fully understood what you do, not because you did not try to explain it, because what you do resists explanation, in the way that things resist explanation when the explanation requires the listener to have been in the room. She understood this. She did not ask questions that could not be answered. She just counted the years. 16 of them. She held your hands after the ceremony. Not dramatically, just held them. These are the hands that she washed after you got them dirty as a child. The hands she watched grow from things that could barely hold a pencil to things that can perform a surgical airway in total darkness in a moving vehicle. She held them for a long time. She did not say anything. She did not have to. Stanley is there in the suit. He is looking at the ceiling during the emotional part, which is most of it, which means he spends most of the ceremony examining ceiling tiles with the focused attention of a structural engineer conducting an assessment. After the ceremony, he finds you. He says 16 years, he says. You tell him 16 years. He says, and you spent all of it keeping people alive. You tell him you tried. He says no, he says. You did. There is a difference, and you know there is a difference. You look at him. He says the kid with the femur, Reyes, Torres, the 712 in the log. That is not trying, that is doing. You tell him, some of them did not make it. He says, I know, he says. And you carry those. I have watched you carry those for 16 years. But the ones you carry do not cancel the ones you saved. They exist separately. Both of them real. Both of them yours. You stand there for a moment. Then you tell him, that is the most coherent thing he has ever said. He says, I prepared it. You tell him you can tell. He says 3 drafts, he says. I wanted to get it right. You drive home that evening. The medical bag is in the back seat. Old habit. It goes where you go. It has gone where you go for 16 years. Tomorrow you will unpack it properly and inventory the contents and organize them for the last time and put it somewhere it will not be in the way. Not tonight. Tonight it stays in the back seat. You sit in the driveway. You think about your hands. 57 weeks of training, 16 years of deployment, 712 patients in a tent clinic, the femur, the abdomen, Reyes, the name you do not say, the ones in between, the boy who got to keep his father, the mother who held your hands after you fixed her son. Your hands are the same hands. They do not look like it, but they are. You go inside. The bag stays in the car. One more night.